My name's Scott Ewing, and I served in the Army from September 2004 through September 2007 as a cavalry scout. I deployed to Iraq about a month after finishing basic training as a private first class with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. We spent most of our time in Tel Afar. It's a city of about 200,000 people just west of Mosul in the north. After we completed our year-long tour of duty in March 2006, our deployment was described by President Bush as a model of counterinsurgency operations. He said of Tel Afar that it was a free city that gives reason for hope for a free Iraq. The media pounced on this, and almost immediately there was criticism of this optimistic assertion. Newsweek questioned whether things had really improved that much. For one thing, we had driven out thousands of Sunni and created a more homogeneous population of predominantly Shia tribes. Additionally, by the end of our deployment, we had about 1,000 troops per square kilometer in the city. Between then and now, Tel Afar has seen some of the most violent and deadly attacks of this occupation. When we first arrived at Camp Sykes, there were frequent attacks on U.S. forces. I was in a scout platoon. I was a dismount in a Bradley. And initially we began by doing fairly simple operations. We did overwatch missions to try to detect people placing IEDs on main supply routes, and patrols in neighborhoods that were viewed as relatively safe. One of the first things we noticed when we went into the city is that kids approached our vehicles fairly fearlessly, and my job was to get out of the Bradley and stand next to it and provide security. And we had an interpreter with us. All the kids they didn't necessarily approach us at first, but they all did this. So I asked the interpreter what this means, and he said it means they want soccer balls, because apparently the unit before us had frequently taken soccer balls out and given them to the kids. Sometimes they also made a motion like this, which meant they wanted an MRE. So the previous unit had routinely handed things out to the local kids as they patrolled the neighborhoods. It was billed as a gesture of goodwill. And we began to bring candy out in bags, and the guys up in the turret of the Bradleys would throw it out to the sides of the vehicle. As soon as they did this, of course, the kids all rushed to the side of the vehicle and hung out and fought for the candy. Our interpreter suggested there was another motive, which was also repeated or implied by other people in my unit, which was that if the kids are around our vehicles, the bad guys won't attack. Whether it was a gesture of goodwill or whether we were using kids as human shields, there were other times when our vehicles stood in safe areas of the city where we had formed an alliance with a local Shia tribe. Soon, the children in this area became more of an annoyance than anything, and we stopped bringing candy out on missions. Not long after we got to Tel Afar, we were told that 2 rival tribes had fought over control of the hospital in the city. The tribe that currently controlled the hospital, we were told, wanted us to come and provide security for it. So we started doing rotations at the hospital. There were already Iraqi army troops stationed there, on the roof, inside the hospital, and at the gates. At first, we took over a room on the ground floor with hospital beds in it, with our weapons, and that's where we stayed. Of course, as soon as we arrived, the hospital was attacked, and all the Iraqi army troops on the roof fired wildly out into the neighborhoods. So within a few hours of us arriving, soon the hospital saw patients. There were virtually none when we got there, and after we were attacked and the Iraqi army shot into the neighborhoods, a man came in, shot through the chest, a boy came in, shot through the leg, and so this cycle began to be repeated. Every time we would go out, people would mortar the hospital, shoot RPGs, and small arms fire, and normally the Iraqi army would fire back. Eventually, somebody suggested that actually staying in the hospital as a fighting force might be a violation of the Geneva Conventions. It was a sergeant who suggested that in the presence of an officer, and a few days later we moved to another building about 50 feet away from the hospital. It was a government building about a stone's throw away, and we started staying there. So the hospital was still mortared, because mortars are not very precise, and so even if they're shooting them at the building 50 feet away, we were still drawing fire into the hospital.